Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Today we are going to be doing a review of the Fujifilm GA645 medium format camera. It's a medium format camera that shoots 6x45 frames in vertical. It's sort of a rangefinder, but you can't focus like with a rangefinder patch normally. It's mostly used AF, so autofocus. You can choose manual focus by pressing the button on the side of the camera and using the little wheel on the top to go by stepped distances. So you can go from infinity down to like 5 meters, 2 meters, and so on. So basically you can use it as manual camera if you need to be sure where you're focusing, but the AF works fairly good. It is a 90s sort of AF, so it does make a little bit of noise, and sometimes it doubts where it's focusing, especially when you're shooting against surfaces like water or glass where the IF infrared beam will not focus properly, just like the Contax G2 and similar. This camera does shoot 15 pictures per roll of 120. There was the I version, so the GA645i that did shoot 16 pictures if you want one more frame per roll. Also can shoot 220 film if you can find it, so it will give you 30 frames or 32 frames if you're shooting the I version. It came in 3 different models, and now we have the normal one. It had the 60mm f4, which is what we have here on the table. Then there's the wide version, which is the GA645 wide, which had a 45mm lens, which is really good for kind of like walking around, kind of like a 28 equivalent. This version of the 60 is around a 45-ish equivalent to universal 35mm camera. And then there's a zoom camera, which is a 55 to 90mm with a zoom range. And the aperture is not so good, but it's a zoom range point and shoot medium format camera that basically you could fit on a big coat's pocket or some cargo pants. It does come with built-in flash, which is pretty amazing. You just have to press the button and basically the flash pops up and loads itself. You can't choose if you want it rare or first shutter or the rare shutter. So you can't choose that, and you can't manually output the flash, but it does a really good job of metering the scene and filling up for pictures, like you'll see in the examples later down in the video. Then you do have a flash Hotshoe on the top, so you could put either a pocket whizzer or transmitter or your flash of choice on top and use a proper handheld meter to output the flash in the strength you need. Not exactly what I would use it for. The flash on top really does a great job, but if you do want to have that extra choice, you can use that. There's no PC sync anywhere on the body, only the Hotshoe on the top. One thing that it does do with the flash, it will sync at all speeds. So there's no shutter speed that you start seeing, a bit of black on it. So you can use all the shutter speeds. I think it does all the way to 1/500th of a second or 1/400th of a second with a leaf shutter inside the lens. The camera does count with different modes. So you have basically the off mode, which basically the camera's off, waiting for you to load it. Then you have the P, which does everything automatically for you, aperture and shutter speed. You can only choose the ISO, so you manually have to dial in the ISO of your film. I think Fujifilm did have the actual film, the 120 film and 220 had its own DX code reading, but I've never tested that out, so just be careful for that. I always go to the ISO and basically change it manually, and you can go down and up as much as you want pretty much for anything normal. Then you do have the A mode, which is Aperture Priority. You basically shoot choosing the aperture depending on available light and whatever you want to shoot. That's the mode I've been shooting on 99% of the time because it actually does a great job metering for you and compensating. The only issues I've had is with that 1/400th of a second max shutter speed, but it's not a big deal because usually I'm shooting negative color, either in black and white or color negative, and the exposure usually has no problem if you overexpose. And then you do have a manual mode, which lets you navigate between shutter speed and aperture, and it gives you a little plus minus sign like most cameras inside the viewfinder. Then when you're shooting on the normal modes like aperture or program, you can always use plus minus compensation button. You press that button and it lets you go in half steps all the way to +2 or -2. So if you're shooting against the sun or in a dark environment with a lot of contrast where the meter might get tricked, you can always dial in your own compensation to make sure you get the right exposure. Like I said, manual focusing has the button on the bottom and the dial on the top. It's fairly easy to use, but unless you really want to nail focus, manually, I highly recommend using the AF. It does a great job. The AF, when you're shooting, it does have parallax compensation, so your little viewfinder does shrink to compensate for closer focusing, and when you're focusing in the infinity, it kind of does the whole window. So that's really nice and useful for composing your shots, because you're not looking through the window, you're kind of looking through a like rangefinder styled camera. It does have a self timer, so you can press that and actually shoot and either have no tripod and the camera won't vibrate with your hands, or you can take your own picture like if you're traveling, and it does have a tripod mount on the bottom, which is very useful for, you know, night photography, low light photography, any kind of stuff like that. Then it has a button for data. So basically this camera has an infrared little data thing inside. So it beams the aperture, the mode you're in, the speed it shot, and I think even the ISO on the outside of the negative, which is impressive because there's not a lot of space and there's the little buttons that they beam. So if you're using something like aerochrome film or some infrared film from black and white, you do want to set that off. If not, it will probably fog all your film. It does count with a normal shutter on the side, so any cable release cable you can use to shoot without major vibration or long exposures. Inside the viewfinder, apart from seeing the vertical 645 window, you do have aperture on the bottom, speed, and distance. So when you're focusing and you're doubting if it's focusing properly, you can see the actual distance, and you probably know by eye how far your subject is. When it misses focus, it actually really misses, like the Contacts G2 and G1. So you make sure, it's pretty easy to make sure that you're not shooting the wrong, focus distance. Apart from that, when you're in manual or other modes, you'll see different dials and colors and things, which is really nice. It helps you shoot very nicely, and the viewfinder is big and bright. One thing about this camera is the fact that it is aging, and due to electronics, the dial on the top, which basically works for pretty much everything, aperture, time, compensation, up and down ISO, starts being fiddly. So when you turn it, it starts skipping speeds. But this camera makes amazing results, as you can see right now on the screen. I've been using it mostly in Aperture Priority. It's a sharp lens. When it focuses properly, you get great results. Rendition for Fujifilm cameras and medium format is amazing. The size of this camera is pretty much the size of SLR, normal SLR camera with a 50mm lens, but you're getting like 3 times the size of the negative, which is impressive. You can enlarge this as much as you want and you'll never have any issues. It can shoot, of course, color negative, black and white, or slide film if you want. And as you can see by the results that I'm posting, I shot some HP5, some Acros 100, I shot some color Fuji 400H, and it's amazing camera, pocketable and easy to carry. The only weird thing is that it's vertical frame, so it does kind of call for vertical shots, but horizontal are fairly easy. You want to make sure you don't cover the infrared focusing beam, because if not, it won't know where to focus and it'll miss shots. Apart from that, it's a wonderful camera. Prices have been skyrocketing lately. They used to be found for around $300 or euros. Now they're starting to be seen at $600, $700 or euros. And do remember that they do fail slowly, so make sure you get a good working camera. Well, that's all for this camera. I hope you enjoyed this little review with examples. I love this camera. It's not actually mine. I had the wide version that I did a video, and I'll leave the link up and down. But it's awesome. I highly suggest, if you want to point and shoot and you don't want to buy the Contacts T2 because they're basically the same price, you can go with this, shoot medium format film. It is more expensive, but you do get 15 or 16 shots, which is fairly good for medium format, and you won't regret it. And you can always resell it if you don't like it. So yeah, guys, thanks for watching, and let me know what you think about this camera. Do you own it? Do you want it? Have you shot it? Whatever it is, leave a comment below. See you in the next video.